Mark Leslie here, and I recently recorded a video that I shot on location at Levack Mine in Levack, Ontario, relaying a ghost story from the haunted level 2650. You're going to see that in just 1 second. Now, when I was doing the video, I did it very, very quickly, and of course didn't always refer to my notes properly, and of course I messed up on a few key points that some friends of mine who are more familiar with the proper mining terms reminded me of. So, for example, I call the big tower that you see behind me, I call that a tower when it is in fact officially the head frame of the mine. And that is where what I call the elevator that actually takes the miners down into the different levels of the mine. That's actually officially called the cage, and it is a large cage that takes you down this massive elevator shaft. And of course I use that term to help explain it to the layperson who may not be familiar with some of those terms. So I'm going to play the original video and then also going to read a short section from the book Spooky Sudbury, just so you can get the real details and you can kind of see the difference between the details that I shared on the spot out of memory and then the actual details that I had recorded from the great interview I did with Hans Brosch. Here's the video.
Happy Friday! It's Mark Leslie here with Free Friday Frights, and I'm actually standing outside the Levack Mine in Levack, Ontario, and I'm going to share a story to you that appeared in the book Spooky Sudbury. Now, this particular chapter that I'm going to talk about, or the story I'm going to talk about, was a tale that was relayed to me in the Tim Hortons in Dowling, Ontario, where I sat down with Hans Brosch. And Hans was, he's a retired miner who's gone around and shared stories with school children, and he's written some books about the history of Levack Mine, as well as mining in the Sudbury region. And there's this one particular tale that he shared with me about haunted level 2650 at Levack Mine. As the story goes, allegedly it was over a weekend event, and so there weren't very many people working at the mine. What you can see is the tower where the elevator is from the Levack Mine. I've actually had the pleasure of going down there with my Uncle Leslie, and yes, that's where the name Mark Leslie came from. My middle name is named after him. He took me and my cousin Rodney down into the mine to explore it, and it was several miles deep. And it was actually on the weekend. There was just basically one person who was down there, and there was the captain up top who was in control of the elevator, and he was down exploring in the mine. He was doing some of the work, and he called up to his colleague up on the surface and said, "Get me out of here now!" And there was panic in his voice. He was terrifying. He's like, "Are you injured? What happened? What happened?" He said, "Just get me out of here." And now the elevator, from the depth that he was down, actually took about 15 minutes for it to go down and then raise him back up. And when he got to the top of the surface, he said, "There's somebody down there." And he's like, the response was, "There's nobody down there. It's completely empty. It's completely quiet. You're the only person down there." He said, "No, there is somebody down there." He had seen, when he was there by himself, 2 glowing eyes staring at him from the dark. And he refused to ever go down into the mine on his own again. He was convinced that there was a ghost at haunted level 2650 here in Levack, Ontario. One of the potential theories is that perhaps it was a raccoon or some sort of animal that had gotten into one of the pieces of equipment that was brought down to that level, and maybe he was seeing the eyes of the raccoon or something like that. But whatever it was, when he was there by himself, he saw something, felt a presence, saw these 2 eyes staring at him in the dark, and refused to return to level 2650. Now, because I'm far away from my normal Wi-Fi signal and I don't have a really strong signal, I'm going to keep this particular Free Friday Frights relatively short. But that's the only ghost story I managed to get from Levack, Ontario, Levack Mine, which is just about a 45-minute drive northwest of Sudbury, and that's where I'm standing now. Actually allegedly I'm trespassing right now because I'm on the Vale property. It used to be Inco, now known as Vale. And so I'm going to try and get out of here as quickly as possible, not just because of the black flies, but because, I'd rather not be trespassing on this property. But again, that's a bit of the story of the haunted level 2650 here at Levack Mine. This is Mark Leslie for Free Friday Frights. Hope you have a fantastic Friday, because it's all about alliteration, right? And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Oh my God, that's alliteration too. I just can't stop myself. Thanks so much for checking this out. Have a great weekend.
So there's the video. Now I'm just going to read the short excerpt so we can actually get the details properly, and that's when I put on the old man reading glasses. In the chapter, I actually open the chapter talking about Stanley Coren's talk about sleep deprivation and the fact that miners work shift work, and there's an association between shift work and sleep deprivation, and sleep deprivation can actually lead to seeing things because you're overtired and your imagination works overtime. So as I begin that, I'm just going to cut into the chase. And I said, so combine Stanley Coren's findings regarding the effect of 12-hour shift work with being alone in a dark, damp, cold place, and you can just imagine how it would wreak havoc on a person's imagination. That's exactly the type of thing that Sudbury area historian Hans Brosch, author of multiple books about mining in the Sudbury area, including Levack Mine, 100 Years, 1912 to 2012, might tell you when sharing a particular ghost story. The mine used to be closed on the weekend. The mine was entirely empty on weekends back then, except for emergencies, Hans Brosch said, over a coffee at the Tim Hortons in Dowling. The only people around would be a single hoistman, one operating shaft boss, an OSB, and one fire guard. Brosch explained that the fire guard would have to climb down the ladder, travel throughout the mine, and occasionally punch a clock to certify that he had visited particular locations. At the end of each trip, the fire guard would get into the cage and be hoisted back up to the surface. On one lonely night in the mid-1970s, the operating shaft boss received a phone call from the 2650 level. It was the fire guard, entirely panic-stricken. "Get me out of here," the fire guard screamed. "What's wrong? I need to get out of here now," he pleaded. The OSB would hear the terror in the man's voice and pause to ask if he was injured or if there had been some sort of accident. "No," was the response. "I'm not hurt. Get me up now." The cage, which traveled at 1,500 feet per minute, took almost 15 minutes to bring the fire guard up. The hoistman needed to do a trial trip first, which would add about 5 or 6 minutes to the overall journey. The whole time he was waiting, the operating shaft boss was worried for the safety and well-being of the fire guard. He also wondered if by the time the cage arrived, the fire guard would be over the incident in question. But despite the length of time it took to get up, the fire guard arrived still terrified. He was visibly shaken, and the panic in his voice hadn't subsided. "There's someone down there," the fire guard said. "You're the only one down there." "No, there is someone. Something is down there. A ghost. I saw a ghost down there," the fire guard insisted. "There's no such thing," the OSB replied. "Settle down. You're fine." "I'm not fine. I was down there in the dark with a ghost." There was nothing that the operating shaft boss nor the hoistman could do to alleviate the fire guard's angst over what he had seen. He went on to swear on a stack of Bibles that he had seen a ghost on 2650 level. Hans Brosch explained that he had been a fire guard multiple times, but he himself had never seen a ghost. However, despite not believing in ghosts, he enjoys sharing a ghost story or two of his own and understands just how much fear belief in ghosts can strike in men's hearts. Hans talked about his admiration for a fun ghost story, explaining that he felt most really good ghost stories begin with a kernel of truth, but they are often peppered with a fierce imagination, one that is fueled by fear, and not just the fear of the person who experienced the incident, but also fear in the listener's heart. When asked about whether or not that particular fire guard might have actually seen something paranormal on 2650 level at Levack Mine, Brosch went on to explain what he thought what might have really happened. "I think he really did see something," Brosch said, "and he's convinced that what he saw was a ghost. But here's what I believe what he really saw." Brosch explained that sometimes a cat, raccoon, or other nocturnal animal would climb into the timbers on the trucks and get hauled down into the depths of the mine. Once transported underground, the animals would wander around, panicked and confused. He also said that sometimes bats would find themselves down in the deep, dark shafts. "Bats can be good," Brosch said, explaining he had a friend who suggested he leave a bat in his own attic one time because they eat all the insects. But in a mine, a bat hanging down from the ceiling could sometimes spook people. When the fireguard was walking around and shining his light to inspect the mine, Brosh believes that what he most likely saw when he claimed to have seen a ghost is the reflected lights in the eyes of a small animal peering out from the dark. 2 eerie eyes staring straight back at the fireguard. His ghost. At least that's what Hans Brosh believes. He smiles and jokes and says, "You never really know." The fireguard was not so easily convinced. He continued to swear that 2650 level was haunted and that he had been down there alone with a ghost that evening, and he swore that he would never go back again. And he never did go back underground. Again, having been in the dark, in the mine, with all of the lights off, I can't say I blame him. And some of the comments that I saw on my Facebook page when I originally posted this live video, I had folks say, "I've seen and heard eerie, scary things too," and I'm looking forward to them sharing them with me so that I can in turn share them with you. Thanks again for checking out this free Friday Frights. Again, this is Mark Leslie. Hope you have a wonderful day.